Your procrastination comes largely from the thoughts that you have and allow yourself to get throughout the day. It comes from the reasons you accept. Let's take an example for this. Let's say you're going to the gym, and you set out to go to the gym every morning at 6 a.m. You're hitting the gym for an hour before you even go to work. You go to the gym, and for the first week, you're fine, right? It's easy, you're motivated, everything's great. But then it gets more difficult, and your mind starts to throw in these little reasons. And they're not really that important. They're not really that valuable, but they're good enough. Your mind throws in stuff like, hey, you've worked so hard. Look at you, you've went to the gym 6 days out of this week. I know you said every day, but your muscles hurt, you're tired, it's really not in your best interest to go. So well, you totally deserve a break, so why not just take 1 day break? Just a 1 day break, it's totally fine, right? Take a day off. You deserved it, you really worked hard for this. And of course your response is, yeah, I did work hard. You know, I did work out 6 days a week. Who cares if I said 7? I did a lot. And I do deserve the break. Yeah, you're right, mind. Thank you. The problem with that is that as soon as that thought, as soon as that reason comes in, a bigger one will come in the next time. A less reasonable one will come in next time. And you'll still take that reasonably. You'll still take that for all it's worth. Then another thought will come in like, hey, you know what, you worked 5 days this week. That's good enough, right? You said 7 days, 5 out of 7, that's still a passing grade, you're doing good. And you go, you know what, yeah, you're right. And slowly but surely you accept worse and worse reasons, or rather, better and better excuses. Because you've allowed that little leeway, you've allowed that little loophole where the thoughts just go through, and then that hole gets bigger and bigger as more pass through. And before you know it, your mind just goes, hey, you worked out 1 day this week, awesome job. You can take 6 days break, you deserve those days. And you go, yeah, you're right. Because it's that slow progress that makes you procrastinate more and more and more. If you want to counteract this, if you want to stop procrastinating so much, you have to cut it off at the source. You have to, when it's that little tiny reason, already say no. It's not good enough. You can't allow anything through. You cannot have loophole. It's very important to note that this loophole is something that you're not consciously aware of. If you put in an exception to a rule, that rule is still within the mindset or the frame that you put it in at first. And that's fine, right? You don't have to be super retentive, you don't have to be super strict on yourself, but you cannot allow those little loopholes through. You cannot allow the passive stuff, the stuff you didn't think about through. Adjust it afterwards, if anything. Let me explain what I mean by this. Let's say you set out to work out 6 days out of 7. Or that you made an exception that if your body really hurts, like let's say you put it on a score of 6 out of 10 on a pain scale, if that's your exception to working out, then you've set a boundary. And nothing beyond that boundary is allowed. You have to cut every thought off that tries to overstep this boundary, even slightly, because that slight gap will increase bigger and bigger. So you cannot allow anything beyond that. So if, let's say, one day you have a 5 out of 5 on the hurt scale, like your muscles ache and it's giving you a considerable amount of pain, like 5.5 out of 10. That's not good enough. You said 6. So anything beyond that is not okay. And you have to understand it. You have to really cut these thoughts off right when they try to come in. These reasons, these bullshit excuses that are disguised as valuable reasons. You have to follow what you set out to do. Now, if you're feeling a 6.5 out of 10 on the hurt scale, that's totally fine. Because it's you who consciously decided that that's okay. But it's not a reason that tries to sneak its way in. It's not something that just tries to come through under the radar. You have to nuke those reasons right away. You cannot allow them, no matter how good they may seem. Now, if you realize, for example, that feeling 5.5 out of 10 on like pain scale is too much, then you have to suffer through it the one day and adjust it the next day. Because if you adjust it on the fly, if you adjust it that day, you're allowing your mind to get the better of you. You're allowing the reasons to change your plan. This is the same thing as like sleep on it tonight or think about it for a little while before you make a decision. It goes by the same rule. of you just not going with the impulse decision and letting that impulse take over. And then when you set these boundaries, when you set these standards, you're not going to procrastinate as much anymore, because you're the one that remains in control. 99% of procrastination are just bullshit excuses. You following reasons that aren't really reasons, that snuck in some way. You really have to nail them at the source. You really have to get them out of the way right away. You can't allow anything to slip past. So if you said you woke up at so if you're saying you're going to wake up at 6 in the morning, that means 6 in the morning. It doesn't mean 6 in the morning and 5 seconds. It doesn't mean 6:05. It doesn't mean 6:10. It doesn't mean 7. It means 6 in the morning. Everything else is a failure. And no reason is good enough not to do that. You're tired, doesn't matter. You didn't put in the exception that you wouldn't get up if you're tired. Doesn't count. If you stayed up all night, sucks for you. You didn't put in the exception. You don't get to excuse yourself. That's not a good enough reason. You don't get to excuse yourself from that. Because if you do, it's that little reason, it's that little loophole. And your thoughts one by one will come and make it grow. And eventually, all that discipline, all that stuff that you wanted to do, all that hard work, all that drive, all that grinding will come to a halt. Nuke the thoughts right away. Really do not allow them in. Find them, be aware of them, and as soon as they come, just say no. Put a stop to it. It's not good enough. It's not okay. If you want to make this easy on yourself, set the boundaries clearly and in advance. Figure out what the boundaries are, what the exceptions to the rules are, and what you're really striving for. If you want to wake up at 6 in the morning, what are the exceptions to that? What are all the possible loopholes that you set yourself? And what are the boundaries for those loopholes? And you have to make it something concrete, not something subjective. That's why, for example, at the gym example, we use concrete numbers. Now, I know those numbers are going to be a subjective feeling, but it's still numbers. It's not saying, oh, if I'm hurting too much, I won't exercise. Because that can vary. But a 5.5 out of 10 can vary too, but it's still more objective than just saying too much. You have to set clear boundaries. You have to set clear standards. Otherwise, the excuses, the reasons will just come in, and then you find more reasons to procrastinate. Because your mind wants you to procrastinate. It's not necessarily in your favor. It's just trying to do what you've taught it to do. And at this point, that's procrastinating. That's not self-discipline. So when you start doing this at first, it's going to be tough. And you're going to miss a lot of these moments. You're going to still have loopholes, and you're going to have to come back to them. You're going to have to readjust. You're going to have to reset the boundaries. You're going to have to put wired fences on the boundaries. You're going to have to build the walls. You're going to have to just make sure that those boundaries that you've set are impenetrable. But your thoughts, the reasons, will do the Mission Impossible thing and will still make it through every once in a while. And that's okay. If they do, just reset the boundaries. Find a loophole and then say that's not a loophole, that is a loophole. So I hope you got what I'm saying here. The main thing here is that you have to stop the thoughts at the source. No loopholes. If you said you do something, you do that, or you set an exception in advance. And everything else has to be a no.